welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, got a good one today. We're going to surprise a number of people probably, and I'll be hearing from a number of different fan bases, especially in the ACC, who did I dismiss, who did I not respect, and who did I maybe rate a little bit higher, but we'll see. But these are my top ACC coaches in order. Before we get started, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Again, the channel has been growing like crazy because of you guys' support. Can't thank you guys enough. Please like and comment, and please share the video. Share it to your friends. Love to hear their thoughts and what their order is. Maybe what did I get right? What did I get wrong? Would love to hear your thoughts. So to start it off in the ACC, the coaches' rankings, really, to me, I think some of these are pretty straightforward because of the body of work that these coaches have put in. Obviously, we have a lot of newcomers, but people that have been in the conference for a number of years now. I think when it comes to these rankings, of course, they're very opinionated. But to me, I'm going to talk a little bit about today why I have each one at each spot. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments and where you would rank these coaches from 1 to 14. Number one, I think I have the obvious one to say the least, and that's Dabo Swinney. Okay, Dabo is really the echelon of what the ACC is right now. Obviously, multiple national championships, multiple trips to the college football playoff. Obviously, 161-39 in his career at Clemson. You know, Clemson obviously had a good reputation before he started, but there's a reason why he got that job. And Clemson took a chance on a wide receiver coach, not an offensive coordinator, not a defensive coordinator, but a wide receiver coach. And I think what Dabo's done in the time that he's been at Clemson, the amount of years he's been there, 10 plus wins, how many times in a row consecutively, he's built the culture. He is really the leader when it comes to the coaches in the ACC. Now, this might be a surprise to some of you guys, but to number two, it's pretty simple to me, and that's Pat Narduzzi out of Pitt. Here's why. Pat Narduzzi obviously been to the ACC championship game 2 times since he's been the head coach here at Pitt. Obviously, in his record at Pitt, he's 62-41, but he's also 41-25 since he's been in the ACC with Pitt. Obviously, 41-25, 41 wins is the second most wins, just behind Dabo Swinney. Also, too, Pat Narduzzi is the only coach that has beaten Dabo Swinney more than once. As a matter of fact, Pat Narduzzi's beaten him twice in the times that he's faced them, along with Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers having one ACC championship so far. And I think that so far he's built that out. We'll see to continue to see where he goes. Obviously, I think Pat, having him at number 2, is pretty significant because of the body of work he's been there. Now going into his 9th year at Pitt, I think he's proven himself to this point with the last 2 years, 20 wins, back-to-back rankings in the top 25 to end the year. I think the body of work is there to where your number 1 and your number 2 are pretty set. Number 1 being Dabo Swinney at Clemson, number 2 being Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. Now, when it comes to number 3, this is going to shock you guys a little bit. I've got Mike Elko from Duke. Obviously came over from Texas A&M, the former defensive coordinator. Last year, really his first year at Duke, he took a team from Duke that had maybe 3 wins in 2021, completely turned it around to where Duke won 9 games last year, a 9-4 record. That can't be understated. It can't be overstated enough. And here's why. A team that was that rough in the beginning, obviously he's developed. Him and Kevin Johns, the offensive coordinator, have a great quarterback, and Riley Leonard. We'll see where that continues to go. But I think when you look at with the body of work so far, just in 1 year, being able to transform a team like Duke that has really struggled. Okay, obviously, they had the number of success way back decades ago, obviously. But let me tell you something. Mike Elko really bringing Duke to where it was, where the basement, a place where you wondered if Duke was even a Power 5 program at some points, comes in his first year and goes 9-4 with the Duke Blue Devils. I think that can't be overstated enough, because when you look at this from a perspective of what the resources are, obviously we look at Duke as the brand for basketball, where the rivalry is with UNC, especially in the ACC towards the top. Obviously, Duke had a down year in basketball this year, but as for football, you really don't think about Duke being up there in football terms. But what Mike Elko has done, especially in his first year, offensive coordinator Kevin Johns, developing Riley Leonard, you got to give him credit. And I bump him up to this point because of the adjustment that he's made so far. And now you have him even being ranked possibly higher. They're tied for 6th in the preseason ACC rankings with Pitt, but potentially they say they could be a burner to potentially challenge for a higher spot in the ACC when they get there. Now, at number 4, I have a name that's pretty recognizable, been in a couple different places, but mostly where he was well known for is at the University of Texas, but now at North Carolina, and that's Mack Brown. Mack Brown, obviously, a guy with development. When you look at him, you look at Sam Howell. When Sam Howell was there, obviously you saw him take progressions. They couldn't get over the top because even with the great offense that they had, the defense was struggling. Then you had Drake May come in. The first couple of years, obviously, Mack struggled in his time there, but then Drake May comes on board, and then this past season gets to the ACC championship game. That can't be understated enough. I can tell you this. When you look at what Mack had to do, I think, to turn around really what North Carolina is to make them very competitive in football. Now, here's the thing. Gene Chizik still needs to figure it out on defense. I think their offense again this year, even with Phil Longo going to Wisconsin, I think with the talent that they have, especially at North Carolina, they had the potential to be very good this year again. But the question is, does Gene Chizik find a way to really maneuver this defense? Obviously, they had transfers. They lost guys in the portal. We'll see what that looks like. Obviously, they've recruited well, but the development on defense, you kind of have to wonder where that looks like right now and what it truly means going forward. But with what Mack Brown has done to this point and his overall career, I think when you look at it, you got to put him there. Obviously, in his time in the ACC, he continues to get better. The first couple of years, as I said, they struggled. Last year, getting to the ACC championship game, they were one of the contenders to get there. Obviously, Clemson number 1, Florida State number 2, but UNC still up there. I think they're a team that you have to look at. When it comes to number 5, I've got Dave Clawson. Dave Clawson, obviously, at Wake Forest, a guy that when you look at Wake Forest, people don't know this, but the smallest Power 5 school in the Power 5. So when you look at them, they're a very small school. The resources are not aplenty. I think what Dave's done, especially in 2021, going to the ACC championship game, being able to get them to that point, Sam Hartman obviously developing him. Dave Clawson certainly has a very unique style of offense that he runs, especially at Wake Forest, but it works. Guys like A.T. Perry, who have been there, especially the wide receiver position, you look at him and then a great career that he had at Wake Forest, obviously getting drafted, going to the National Football League. It's going to be interesting to see what does Wake Forest look like going forward. But if we've seen anything, overall, I think, Dave Clawson, especially in his early years, certainly struggled because of who Wake Forest is. But when you look over time, what he's been able to do to put Wake Forest where they are right now, that's a hell of an accomplishment. And I think putting him really at number 5 makes a lot of sense because of the hard work that he's put in and also the results in general. Now, when it comes down to number 6, this is a guy that personally I like, but can never get to that next step. They're just so close every time. And then there's a loss in the ACC that they just shouldn't lose. And it just seems continuously, if you guessed his name, yep, you're right, Dave Doeren. That's how I got it number 6. Obviously, Dave Doeren at NC State, for most people don't know, is 72-54. Obviously, a good winning percentage right there. Obviously, he has those years where they're so close. They've well known for their defensive line for how many years in a row. You look at them and you say, man, you're so close every year. What can you do to get over the top? Tony Gibson, I think he's a hell of a defensive coordinator. He's done a good job there, but now it's trying to figure out what they can do. They brought Brennan Armstrong in this year. What's that going to look like after having TJ Finley and those guys leave? It's going to be incredible to see. Obviously, brought in Brennan Armstrong's former OC from Virginia. He was up in Syracuse last year. NC State brings him in to create that better feel. Obviously, I think Brennan Armstrong leaving Virginia to go to NC State is a good move for him. We'll see what that looks like. But I think Dave Doeren, putting him at the number 6 spot, he deserves it because of the record that he does have. He's developed a heck of amount of talent. But again, a guy that just can't get over the top and can't get into that championship game. So we'll see what it looks like, but I think he's deserving to be at that spot. Now you're probably wondering, where's this guy been? Especially some of the Florida State fans. I'll probably hear it in the comments section. But at number 7, I got Mike Norvell. For the people who don't know out there, Mike Norvell, in his 3 years in Tallahassee, he's 18-16. Obviously, the first 2 years only had 8 wins between the first 2 years. Was a very rough start. Lost to Jacksonville State. a couple years ago until last year when they saw that 10-3 season. They finally got back to 10 wins after really the last 6 or 7 years being dormant, not being able to do anything. That was the one thing really holding them back. A 10-win season was good last year. But going into last year in year 3, Florida State fans, if you go back and look at any of the clippings, any of the presses, especially the media, anything that we talked about here on the channel, Norvell was on the hot seat last year. So for me, I think putting him anywhere towards the top would be a misrepresentation of what he's done. Obviously, last year was a great start. I think he really jumps up on my board if he's able to get 9 or 10 wins again, because it proves that Florida State can actually build off of multiple seasons. But at this point, the question that we need to ask is it a fluke or is Florida State back? I think right now we're in the middle of trying to figure that out. And I think we're going to need a little bit of time. But overall, he's got Jordan Travis coming back this year. We'll see what that looks like. I think he's got plenty of talent on defense and on offense, especially when it comes to the wide receiver position. We'll see what that looks like. But they need to take that step. And I think Mike Norvell, to move up in the coaching ranks, especially within the ACC, you got to prove it. You got to put something on there. And I think last year, was a good step. But the first 2 years, you kind of have to wonder, man, you shouldn't be losing to schools like Jacksonville State. So we'll see what that continues to look like. And another familiar name here, a little bit of a rivalry between Florida State and Miami. Mario Cristobal coming in at number 8. Obviously, his first year back in Miami, his alma mater, 5-7. Certainly not what you wanted to see. Didn't play well down the stretch, especially the last couple of games, a couple blowouts to say the least. You look at this team. Again, Miami's a team that I think has talent, but they need to develop the talent. And I think Mario Cristobal, given enough time, I think he can get them back to that level. Obviously, Mario Cristobal really pushed Oregon into the stratosphere of almost elite status, and he did that by recruiting. Again, Miami has been recruiting well, even the first couple of years now, underneath Mario Cristobal. The transfer portal has been their friend, but last year even had them a little bit higher, especially in terms of coaching. I had Mario Cristobal higher, but after 5-7, you certainly got to drop. So really, I think there's two ways of this going. And I think Mario Cristobal sitting at number 8, he's either going to go up or down. He can't stay at 8, because if you don't improve off of what you did last year, or even 6 or 7 wins, I still don't put him even higher. I think I would actually drop him because of the talent that you have there right now. Tyler Van Dyke being the quarterback, I think you have plenty of talent on the outside, especially the tight end room, especially on the defensive line. We'll see how their offensive line plays, but I think overall they got a couple transfers in, especially too. They worked the portal. We'll see what that looks like. Obviously, a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Obviously, Kevin Steele going back to the SEC. I think when you look at Gaddis going to Maryland, you just got to look overall and see where the mistakes were. But Miami needs to prove itself. Mario Cristobal needs to be better to move up on this list. I think it justifies because of the really lackluster season coming back to Coral Gables and to really represent his hometown. Now, the next one on this list, a new coach comes into the ACC from the Big Ten and goes back to his alma mater as well. We have a number of guys in the ACC here with their alma maters. At number 9, I got Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom, obviously, last year, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Jeff Brom was actually in the Big Ten championship game last year. Obviously, did not go well. Was not a competitive game against Michigan, to say the least. But he got Purdue there. The question is, at this point, can he replicate that talent and replicate that success to where even if he was in the weak, and it's a very weak Big Ten West, just lackluster, flustered, whether it's Minnesota, Nebraska, you got, you have a number of different teams over there, Northwestern, Iowa, who struggles. Obviously, Iowa, well known for scoring maybe 7 or 10 points a game, was kind of shocked to see a number of teams not do well in that division, but obviously Purdue rose to the top. We'll see if Jeff Brom can really try to replicate some of that success, bring it to Louisville. Louisville certainly has the athletic ability, certainly has the athletic facilities to do a lot of great, respectable talent and success, but you got to bring a guy in there. Obviously, Satterfield, I think he didn't leave to go to Cincinnati, he probably would have been fired because of the lack of success that he had there. Obviously, I had Satterfield lower. I'm kind of doing Louisville a favor by putting Jeff Brom up there because of recent and past success and what he can bring here. And I think it's right because, one, the hard work that he's put in from Purdue, and and overall success that he's had, even though it's a little bit of success just by going to a Big Ten championship game, you put him in there, and it makes a lot of sense to where he is right now. Now, when it comes to number 10, this is going to be a good one here. Another new coach, maybe. Takes off the interim tag at Georgia Tech, and that's going to be Brent Key. Brent Key, I thought, did a really good job last year coming into the interim spot, taking over for Jeff Collins. Obviously, Jeff Collins being relieved of his duties because of lackluster success. But Brent Key came in and went 4-4. 4-4 in the time at Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. Obviously, the two big wins being at Pitt and North Carolina. But really two wins you can really build off of. Obviously, some questionable losses still in there, but for the amount of turnover that they had, and obviously you bring in an interim coach, that team really showed that they really like this guy a lot. Obviously, taking the interim tag off there and giving him the full-blown head coach title. I think it would be really interesting to see what he does going forward. I'm kind of rooting for the guy because when you go 4-4 and you take over for that type of team that has so much in general, just with influx, many different issues, quarterback play, whether they're sitting a guy, they're playing him. I think they do have talent, but I think he's going to need a little bit of time. He's going to need time to really up that program, and they need to put a wall around Georgia and bring those guys to Atlanta to make sure that they're able to compete in the ACC. Now, we get towards the bottom here, and I think that these are the guys that you look at, and there's certainly going to be a number of guys on this list that'll be on the hot seat. Some of them maybe not. We'll see. But at number 11, I got Dino Babers out of Syracuse. It feels like, honestly, years ago that when, Syracuse had that 10-win season back in 2017, 2018. I think it was 2018, a 10-win season. It feels like forever ago, and then from 2019 to 2021, only having 11 total wins overall in 3 years, which was a really rough place to be. Obviously, this past year, they rebounded somewhat to be somewhat respectable in terms of being 7-5. We'll continue to see what that does. Me personally, I think Dino Babers is on the hot seat at Syracuse. Syracuse is a tough place to win. It's a tough place to recruit. But a guy like Dino, I think he's been there long enough. He knows the ins and outs. He knows the strengths and weaknesses. I'd like to see what he does this year in terms of being able to put together a full roster. We had Sean Tucker there for how many years? Great running back, but just couldn't get the success going to where even when they went 6-0 at one point in the previous seasons, still fell apart. You can't have that. You want to be a great coach, especially in the Power 5 in the ACC. Dino Babers needs to be better, but I have him at number 11 because he has a chance to move up. If they go 7, 8, potentially even 9 wins this year, I think it's going to be rough for them for the schedule they have. So I kind of put them in that 7, maybe 8 range for wins. And I think that'll maybe satisfy Syracuse fans and their alums. We'll see what they do. If he gives anything below 7 wins, I think Dino Babers could be on his way out at Syracuse. At number 12, I got Tony Elliott. And, Tony Elliott, I think in a first year, I give him a little bit of a break, honestly. But I think, that the tragedy that struck Virginia this past year, I thought he handled it really well. Was unsuspected, just unbelievable situation. 3 great young men lost their lives. Just a tough overall situation. Last 2 games were canceled. I think overall, when you look at it, they went 3-7, but I think he's turning around the culture that's there. And obviously, hopefully this season, no more tragedies. That's really what we want to see. And, and again, just feel horrible for the Virginia community, but all of us are there with them, and we hope nothing but the best for them going forward. And I'll be rooting for Tony Elliott to get to that bowl game this year and to bring back a lot of hope and pride, but more importantly, just bring the community together. And the way that the Virginia community did in Charlottesville, man, it was something special to watch. So we'll really be hoping for them this year and really hope that Tony Elliott really sees success this year because he deserves it. Good coach, good man, to say the least. At number 13, another guy on the hot list, on the hot seat, that's Jeff Hafley at Boston College. Obviously, the first 2 years, 2020 and 2021. In 2020, you look at this guy, really went 6-5. I think that was probably one of his better years. Phil Jurkovec before, he was there for a couple of years with Frank Signetti. They had a little bit of success. They had a number of different wins. But then he leads it up to where he has a rough 2021, and then especially last year in 2022, going 3-9, not what you want to see. You can't be going backwards. That's why he's almost at the bottom of the list for me. And then now he really is in the hot seat coming into year 4. You got to see progression. He's got Moorhead coming in to be the quarterback this year. New quarterback, obviously second year in the system with McNulty at offensive coordinator. We'll see what that looks like. Obviously, the defense needs a lot of overhaul in terms of what the talent needs to look like. I think the offensive line was horrendous last year. That comes down to recruiting. Jeff Hafley has to get things together. I think he's a tremendous coach when it comes to given time, but this is college athletics. You don't get a lot of time. It's year 4. You got to start proving things. You got to start proving development. And I think that's where it starts. And especially in the terms of recruiting, you got to have a little bit of mixture of both. He struggled a little bit, but let's see where they go from here. And then, of course, at last, Brent Pry, obviously the former defensive coordinator at Penn State, takes the head coaching job at Virginia Tech. And just not to mince words, obviously Virginia Tech was horrendous last year. You put them at the bottom right now because of, really, they finished 3-8, obviously last game being canceled. But just numerous areas where you look at and you say, man, Virginia Tech's got a long way to go. And that's not Brent Pry's fault. I think he's trying to do the best he can. The transfer portal will be his friend in terms of bringing in new talent. Justin Fuente did him no favors. I think the Justin Fuente tenure went a little too long, potentially 2 years too long, before Virginia Tech made a move. It'll be interesting to see what Brent Pry does, obviously trying to bring the culture of the defense from Penn State down to Blacksburg. Obviously, they're trying to get their lunch pail together. They put something together. I think the quarterback room needs to improve. I think the offensive line needs to improve. We'll see what they do on the outside. But their defense in general, I think to see a progressive stand where they take that jump is on defense. When you're a defensive coach, you want to see at least some type of improvement this year. It's going to be tough to if I had to guess, it's probably going to be another tough year for them again. I would think probably 4 or 5 wins for Virginia Tech, but that's progress from what they had in 3, especially if they get to 5 or even potentially 6. We'll see what that looks like. But it'll be interesting to see where they go. But that's my list, guys. And I think that again, it can be, there's a number of different surprises in there. I'll love to hear the comments from you guys to see what is your 1 through 14. Who do you think is the number 1 coach? Who do you think from your 1 to 14? Who's in the hot seat? Where do you guys see where the coaching pecking order stands? Let me know. Again, guys, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. Let me know your thoughts. Where do you rank these coaches? Where did I get it right? Where did I get it wrong? But more importantly, share it with your friends. Let's get some more of this out there in terms of more opinions. So, again, to all the ACC fans, Big Ten, SEC, and of course, always to Pitt fans, I'll see you guys soon. Hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys.